Hi, I'm Justin Sears, Product Marketing Manager at Hortonworks. In October, we launched Hortonworks Data Platform 2.0, which I'll refer to as HDP2. At the same time, Apache Ambari 1.4.1 went live. Today's product tour is about Apache Ambari. We'll talk about three things with Ambari. First of all, we'll start with what is Ambari, what does it do, and how does it work. Then we'll move into changes that are new in version 1.4.1. And finally, we'll talk about the roadmap for Ambari, what's coming next. I'm very lucky to be joined today by Mahadev Konar. Mahadev was on the team at Yahoo in 2005 that began work on Hadoop, and he did some of the early work on MapReduce and HDFS. Mahadev is also a co-founder of Hortonworks, and currently he's a committer on Apache Ambari and Apache Zookeeper. Thanks for being here, Mahadev.
My pleasure, Justin.
And I'm also joined by Jeff Spazzetti. Jeff is the product manager for Apache Ambari and Apache Falcon. Welcome.
Great to be here.
So guys, let's talk about Apache Ambari and what it does. Jeff, give us an idea of what Ambari does.
So we introduced Apache Ambari to open source with the idea that we can create a single framework for people to operate Hadoop clusters. We wanted to give them a way to easily provision clusters, manage, and monitor clusters. And we also wanted to make it easier for people to integrate with Hadoop, and that's one of the core things we've built into the product.
So give us a sense of what it was like before Ambari. I mean, give us a story about the pain that was there before you had this great way to manage a Hadoop cluster with Ambari.
A simple example would be, let's say, what would happen is there were jobs running in the cluster. So a simple example would be, yesterday something was running, in the night there was a huge job that was running and that would cause a cluster crash. But we couldn't figure out what was wrong in that job that caused the cluster crash. And because nobody could look at it in the morning, we didn't have data to look at it in the morning. Mm-hmm. So when we came back in the morning, it was almost, there was nothing to look at. So now with the Apache Ambari, we have all the monitoring data and all the data that we can get about all the services and the jobs that we have, we run in the cluster.
So that makes it, oh sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
So does that make it easier then to go back after the fact and diagnose any issue that might come up?
Yes, so it makes it very easy to look at, and we can also, meaning if you look at what the memory consumption and everything in the cluster, you can actually look through the graphs and see, okay, when it was actually so much more or so much less, that you can predict that there was something wrong going over during that day, and it's easier to look at the logs and then figure out that there's something wrong in the cluster.
Going back to you, Jeff, so Ambari, talk about the day in the life of an Ambari user. Who uses Ambari? What do they do? What do they get out of it?
So we've actually seen this in two big areas. So first, it's with enterprises and customers that want to run Hadoop. So what Ambari does is bring together all the Hadoop ecosystem projects under one single point of management and monitoring. So they don't have to go and figure out all the different nuances between the components. So like Mahadev said earlier, the Hadoop ecosystem is bigger than it really has ever been. You know, starting from the core of HDFS and MapReduce, there's now a dozen plus projects that are part of Hadoop. So thinking about each one of those is a difficult task or a challenging task for a traditional operator, and Hadoop makes it look really like one system to them that they can manage and monitor. On the other side, since the way we've designed Ambari is about integration and being a framework for operations, we've seen other software vendors come along and be able to take advantage of Apache Ambari so that they can integrate better with Hadoop. So they actually have a chance to say they don't have to go do point integrations to all these different projects. They can just use Ambari as the single point of control for the cluster, and if they integrate with Ambari, they know it will handle all the stuff in the back end.
And who are some of the companies that have integrated with Ambari?
So we've seen everyone from Teradata and Microsoft to Red Hat, and they've been very active in the communities, have been very good partners of Hortonworks, and have contributed code and contributed ideas and designs to the project, and really have helped build a really strong community and a product.
With Yarn opening up Hadoop to so many more applications that can now run in Hadoop, what role does Ambari play then to coordinate new applications that are coming into the cluster to work with the data?
So let me take that first before Jeff does give his point of view. So with more applications coming into Yarn, what we want to provide to the user is the same experience that we already provide with the other components that we have in Ambari. We want to provide the same pane of glass to look at the applications that run on Yarn, to be able to monitor them, to be able to manage them, to be able to provision them with the same pane of glass that we already provide in Ambari.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, you want to add to that?
Yep, and it would just, ultimately, still keeps Ambari as a central point of operational control, whether it's the individual services running in the cluster or apps inside of Yarn running in Hadoop.
Okay. And one thing I was wondering about is if someone is running on Hadoop, say Hadoop 1.3, and they want to move to Hadoop 2, would they do any of the migration through Ambari? Does it have that capability?
So we actually provide a way for people to stay with the same Ambari and support monitoring a Hadoop 1 or a Hadoop 2 cluster. And so they can actually go and move to Hadoop 2 and keep the same interface.
Tell me about the architecture of Ambari and how Ambari actually works in a Hadoop cluster.
So there is a master, which we call Ambari server, and there are agents, which we call Ambari agents. Ambari agents run on all the hosts, and server is a single point of interface for the UI and the API and the user.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is the server exposes a couple of APIs, not a lot of APIs, which you can integrate with and do monitoring, management, and provisioning of your cluster using those APIs.
Mm-hmm.
And the server actually then the agents, it hands off all the work to the agents to be able to do all the actual work.
As new applications, say, come in to run on Yarn, how will Ambari begin to work with new applications that it has never seen before?
So we're building extensible layer into Ambari. Some of it is already there, but we're making it more extensible so that you can have your own apps and your own systems integrated into Ambari itself. Mm-hmm. And so that you can look at the same APIs and same interface and look at in the Ambari UI you have those same notion of services that you can look at.
So what's new in Apache Ambari with 1.4.1?
The big thing is really around Hadoop 2 support. And inside of there, it's about Yarn and it's about HDF with NameNode HA. So we wanted to make those capabilities available to users so they can easily provision Yarn and set up NameNode HA with Ambari. After you provisioned your cluster and you have a single name node, for redundancy and failover protection, you're going to want a second name node. And so you'll want to set up the name node to be highly available. So inside of Ambari, we've actually taken a lot of the logic and operational tasks that a person would normally do to perform this operation to get a HA name node configured. And you walk through a wizard-driven interface, and Ambari ends up orchestrating the process for you. So you're able to add a second name node to the cluster. You're able to add its supporting services, which are journal nodes. You're able to stand up the other components that it relies on, like a Zookeeper failover controller. And then you end up disabling your secondary name node, since it's no longer necessary in this environment. And then you've effectively turned on NameNode HA.
So now let's look into the future of Ambari. Let's look at what's coming up. Tell us about extensibility and plans for that in the future.
So as we talked about earlier, we have Yarn apps coming, so we want to make our platform very extensible so that you can have new apps, new services integrated into Ambari, and we don't want to be doing it always by ourselves, so we want to make it extensible so third parties, other developers, other users can quickly integrate their services, apps into Ambari itself, and then look at provisioning and management and monitoring through Ambari interface, just as they do it with the services that are already supported with Ambari.
And I know Hadoop 2 and Ambari 1.4.1 just launched, but are you already seeing some people coming forward with applications that they want to integrate into Hadoop? Are you seeing that demand already?
So there is definitely that demand. There is demand that people want to run various kind of applications on top of Yarn. There is Storm on Yarn. We see that a lot. We see HBase on Yarn, and then there are other applications that people are developing and they want to run on top of Yarn. So we are looking at adding Storm to the Ambari view and into the ecosystem, into the Ambari ecosystem. And that will be one of the applications where, when one of the services where we will use our extensible plugin to bake that into Ambari.
So we have a lot of plans around user experience, and that really comes in two parts. We want to make big cluster operations seem small inside of Ambari, so make the experience for the operator a lot easier than ever before. Because what we've seen over the past couple years is, this isn't about 10 or 20 node clusters. This isn't even about a few hundred node clusters anymore. This is about thousands and thousands of node clusters. So as the clusters are scaling bigger and bigger, the number of operators isn't scaling at the same pace. So they need to actually still have the same type of operational control that they had with smaller clusters with these big clusters. So we have to bring features to the table to give them experiences to manage these big clusters as if they're a small one. And on the second side, we want to make it easier for Ambari admins to customize experiences for their users so that they can give them operational controls and they can give them tools to help work with the cluster right inside of Ambari. And the operator can customize and tailor that based on his users.
Jeff, I know there's a lot going on with operational insight also. Tell us about that.
When you think about Ambari sitting in front of these clusters, which are hundreds and thousands of nodes in size, storing and processing big data actually creates a lot of big operational data. So Ambari has access to all that data of how the systems were performing, how they were running jobs, how they were operating over time, and it's very useful today in keeping the cluster running and having it tuned properly. But over a long time period, we want to make it easier for people to actually capture all that data as well, and so they can get a better picture of how their cluster has performed historically so they can plan better for the future.
That's cool. So it's big data on big data.
That's it.
And it's a self-correcting or self-improving system.
Yep.
Well, Jeff, Mahadev, I've really enjoyed our conversation today. Thanks for coming and sharing all your expertise on Apache Ambari.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for joining our conversation about Apache Ambari. We talked about 3 things today. We talked about what Ambari is, we talked about recent releases in version 1.4.1, and we gave a glimpse of the roadmap in the future. Now, if you're interested in keeping up to breast with all the things that are happening with Ambari, please go to our website, Hortonworks.com. We have a page there dedicated to Ambari. Also, as changes come up, some of the ones that we discussed today, we'll be posting to our blog about those changes. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter for minute-by-minute updates anytime something new happens with Ambari. Thanks for joining.